This exercise is going to teach you a bunch of things using a fun little data set kept by the Social Security Administration on baby names. This site here, which is linked to in the tip sheet exercise document, has state-specific data that you can download. This brings down a zip file that has every state in it. So we're going to I'm in this exercise, I'm going to use Minnesota, but when you work on this yourself, you can pick whatever state you like. So from the zip file, I pulled out the mn.txt file. It's a delimited text file, and we're going to import that into Excel. So make sure that you have that in a place that you can find it. I'm going to go to Excel and open a blank workbook. We're going to use the Legacy Import Wizard. There is another video on my site that shows how to make sure you have that turned on in Windows version of Excel. If you have a Mac, you should automatically have the Legacy Import. Where you find it, though, might be a little different on a Mac versus Windows, but generally there's probably a data tab and something about getting data, getting a text file, importing data, import wizard, some wording like that. So in Windows, under the data menu, you will find get data, and once you've added legacy wizards to turn them on, it should be in this list, and I'm going to choose from text legacy. And then it's going to ask you to navigate to where your file is stored. So I'm going to go find that mn.txt file that I just showed you, and it's going to bring up the import wizard, which is probably a little hard to see on the screen. I can't make it any bigger. The first thing it's going to ask, is this delimited or fixed width? It is delimited because the columns are separated by commas. Don't be fooled by the .txt extension. It's not .csv, but it's functioning the same as a CSV file. And then notice that my data has headers is not checked. And if you look at the preview down below, you can see that the data starts right away. There are no headers on here. So we don't have headers. All right, so we're going to leave that alone, say next. And then we're going to tell it what it's delimited by. So I'm going to uncheck tab, check comma, and you'll see in the data preview down below that it's giving us a nice picture of what we have. The next set is where you can set the format of the cells. Right now they're set to general, which means that it's going to guess based on what it finds. Generally it guesses pretty well, but things like codes or zip codes or dates, you may want to do those manually. So for example, the last column here is the number of babies born in that year with that name. I'm going to make sure, well, I'm going to leave that as general, I guess, because it's going to make that numeric, and the year will make that numeric. The gender, we might want to set that as text so that it doesn't accidentally think it's a true-false column. It might because of all those F's in there, but so if we set that as text, that's good. And say finish, and then it's going to ask you where to put it. Since we need a header row, we should make sure we have one. So right now on mine it's telling me it's going to put it in E1, so let's put it in A2 so that we have room for a header. Say OK. There we go. So then the columns are state, gender, year, name, and then I'm going to call it num births, and it's number of babies, number of births, whatever you would like to call. I'm going to call mine num births, so you might want to stay consistent with me. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger. There you go. So so each row in here is a year and a name gender combination and the number of babies with that gender and that name. So this is technically summarized data, but it's still kind of interesting. So we're going to do a lot of work with this num_births column because it is summarized data. So the next thing we need to do is to save this, because if you look at the very top, it says book1-Excel. It's still technically a CSV file. So we wanted to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to put it in this folder. Make sure that this file type is selected as Excel Workbook. It should default to that. And I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call mine babynames_mn and say save. So just make sure you know where you saved it. All right, so now we're saved, we're up and running. So let's start asking some questions. The first one I always have, of course, is how common has your name been over time? So you can pick, perhaps you can find your name in here. If you have an unusual name, it may not be here, because the one big caveat on this data set is it only includes, first of all, people who got a Social Security card. The second is there had to have been at least 5 babies in that state in that year with that name and gender combination in order to show up in here. So if you have a very rare name, it's unlikely to be in here. So either pick your name or pick a name that you like, and we will look for it. So for example, Mary Jo is not in here, but Mary is, which you can see right there at the top. So I'm just going to go with Mary. So let's, we'll start by making a pivot table. Put your cursor somewhere in your data, go to the Insert menu, choose Pivot Table. It should give you the correct data range, and it's going to say New Worksheet. We'll say OK. And then in the filter box, let me make this bigger again. I'm going to pull down name in the filters, and then over on the filter over here, I'm going to look for Mary and just check. Oh, there is a Mary Jo in here. I'm going to just look at Mary though. And then I'm also going to pull down gender, because just to make sure we only get the girls, so I'll choose F on the gender. So I have 2 filters. Now anything else I do on my pivot table will only be to the data that matches that criteria that I've just set. And then I'm going to put year in the rows, because I want to know how many there were each year. And then put num_births in values, and that's going to sum that column, which is what we want, because each row is a summarized set of data, so we want it to sum that. If for some reason it didn't say sum of num_births, you can click on it in that lower corner, say value field settings, and change it to sum right here. Okay, so now we have the list of babies, but I want to make it into a chart. Technically, you can make a quick and dirty chart here in a pivot table. I don't like how it works. So I like to copy and paste my values out. The only way you can successfully copy data out of a pivot table without making a new pivot table is to only take the white part. So avoid this blue and just highlight the white part. Avoid the blue at the top and the bottom and do copy. And I'm going to go to make a new sheet, and I'm going to leave room for a header. And then I'm going to put in year, and I'm going to call this num name Mary, so I remember what I'm doing here. So I'll make this a little bigger for you. Num name Mary. I'm going to do some little housekeeping here. Sheet 1, I'm going to call it data. This is my sheet for Mary, so I'm going to name that Mary. And here's my pivot table. I'll call that a pivot table. So in my sheet with the number of babies with my name, num name Mary, I have the year and the number of babies. So now if we highlight the whole thing, and there's one little shortcut you can do is Control-Shift asterisk. I don't think this works on a Mac, I'm sorry to say. You can try Command-Shift asterisk, but I'm not sure it works. Otherwise, another shortcut is to click on the first column and do Shift and right arrow, and then keep holding the Shift key Shift Control down arrow, and it will go all the way down to the bottom, and then you've got it highlighted. So that's the first shift to the, and then a right arrow, and then Control Shift down to go down both sets of columns. So let's insert a chart. So we'll go to Insert, and in the middle it should say Recommended Charts, or there's some other little buttons that you can do. We'll say Recommended Charts, and it's recommending a line chart. You can also, there's a tab there that says All Charts, where you can choose from all the different kinds of charts. I'm going to do the line chart here and say OK, and it's made me a chart, and it's put it down at the bottom of the screen because that's where I was. I'll move it up a little. Pretty crazy, huh? My name has really fallen off in popularity. So you can edit the title here. You can go to Add Chart Element up at the top and add other things that you would like. But there is a basic chart for you. I'm going to end this video here, and we'll have a new video for the next piece of analysis with this data set.